That's what I was trying to get a snack in.
Okay, going to call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Albany City Planning Board, and welcome everybody. Welcome if you're on Zoom. And I'll introduce the board. We have Denise in the yard. We have Christopher Ellis, Martin Hull, and Al DeSalvo in the chair. And if you look at the screen on the upper right-hand corner, you'll see Roman Kuchera, who is with us on Zoom. We have this meeting is in three parts. We have a workshop agenda, as well as a public meeting agenda, and then a public hearing agenda. The workshop rules I will explain first, and then explain later when we get into the public meeting and public hearing agenda, those rules of procedure. With the workshop, the items on the agenda are either projects that we may have seen a while ago and are not yet up for getting on the meeting agenda or the public hearing agenda. They may have been items that, as I said, we've seen before, or they may have been new items that are brand new to us and that we will look at and discuss with the planning staff. There is no interaction between the public and the planning board unless the board or the staff wants to ask the applicant, if the applicant's in the room or on Zoom, a point of clarification or better information. So with that, we'll begin by opening the workshop agenda, and we have two items on the workshop agenda. One is 32 North Street, which is a proposal by GMS Realty, and it is a proposal in a light industrial and mixed-use neighborhood center to demolish approximately 1,800 square foot building. And the actions that we will be taking at a future meeting will be a determination of significance under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, and of course the demolition review. Okay.
So here is the location of the project, proposed project. 32 North is here. They are proposing a consolidation.
I want to get this so that people out here can hear you.
Hello. So 32 North, 30 North, 23, 27. There's a proposed consolidation of the lots. As you would see in that map on the right, this project falls in two different zoning districts. I-1 for 32 North, which is where the primary use is. The proposal would extend the use into the MUNC zoning district here. The proposal involves a demolition of a residential property on 27, it's 27 Main, and then use that for a parking lot of 7 parking spots, which would qualify that to be a minor development plan review application. This is the proposed site plan where you can see the lot on the top left. That's the one that would get demolished and included in the lot modification. That speaks to the proposed parking lot. And then this is some of our notes pertaining to the project. There is lot modification with the consolidation that's proposed. It would be an unlisted action, so it would be a seeker determination of significance. The application is referred to the Albany County Planning Board, and there are two different zoning districts. The proposed use, that is the main use, that is on 32 North Main Street, is not a permitted use in the MUNC district, which this would be expanding that use into that district. So we're advising the applicant that a zoning map amendment might be a better option here than to expand the use into a zoning district where said use is not permitted. The parking lot is an accessory use, so it would be accessory to the main use. We also would be requiring more information regarding the building that is being proposed for demolition. We don't have any information about the condition of the building at the moment. So that's what we have at this time.
I was out there and for the board's information and looked at the property and looked at the building. The building in question to be demolished, the exterior is in pretty rough shape. I looked inside, and the inside is in okay shape. But I also note that the parking lot that is to be used, it isn't being used now, so they need substantial improvement if they're going to open that lot up for use as it was shown on the plans. Are there any other thoughts? I guess the other thing is that there's a lot of parking there already in that area, and I don't know if there is a possibility that the folks at that building, I think it's an electrical supply company, if I'm not mistaken. As you can see on the map, there's a whole lot of parking in that area. And I'm just wondering if there's the possibility of some agreements for shared parking, because it seems like everybody is trying to get their own parking, and I've been down there more than a few occasions because we've had some other projects in that area, and I've never seen any of the lots totally parked up. So I think that's a question that we should consider when we go to consider this in a public hearing or a meeting. Other questions, comments?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to where on the zoning map the house that's going to be demolished is located.
It is this lot right here.
Okay, so it's right on the border of
Correct.
MUNC.
Yeah, it's both in MUNC, but it's adjacent, obviously, right to the island district. Okay, any others?
I had a question. The building on Broadway, adjacent to 27, and then I guess probably the next lot, is that, it looks like it's it was at one time 3 tax parcels, probably residential, but it looks like what's in a commercial building. Anybody know what that is?
Roman, are you looking at 1263 Broadway?
Yeah, the property's on at the corner of Broadway and Main.
Oh, yes, I see it. I don't have that information, but I can get it to you.
Because it looks like a commercial building, and I don't know if 27 is the only single family or residential dwelling right there between the subject property and Broadway.
No,
No,
the
there's one other there.
31 is residential as well.
Okay,
Yes. That one, 31 is occupied. The building in question for the demolition proposal is not occupied. The utilities are cut off. But that building that was just mentioned is occupied. And the one that you questioned as a residence, and the one that you asked about, Roman, that is a commercial building at the corner of Broadway and Main.
okay.
Other questions? Okay, we'll move on to the other workshop item, which is 10 DeWitt Street. This is a proposal by the Whitney Young Health Center to build a approximately 4,000 square foot addition to an existing building to expand the current use of controlled substance dispensary. It's in a mixed-use form-based, it's in the mixed-use form-based warehouse district. And we're looking at a conditional permit review as well as seeker on this one.
All right, before we get started now, I'm on the board for Whitney Young, so I am going to recuse myself
Okay,
from this. Because,
I don't think we need to leave the meeting though.
yeah, but I just won't be.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
And the record should show then that Vanessa Gerard is our board member of Whitney Young, so she'll be recusing herself from discussion. Okay,
Okay, so this is the location in the zoning district. There's some site plans on here that take a little bit of time to get to the next slide, so I do apologize for the wait. They're proposing an expansion to an existing building. The proposal in front of you is for the conditional use permit to expand the current use. Historically, the current use was approved as a use variance in 1992. And since 2017 USDO update, now there's a need for conditional use permit for that use. And then the expansion also needs a conditional use permit. There will be a minor DPR here, development plan review for the expansion. These are some of the elevations that were submitted for the proposal. Where we are is we're looking for some additional information of the current use and what the expansion would bring about. An increase in number of employees, increasing the number of the population that it's serving, the hours of operation, would they stay the same? How are the people that are the population that's served, how are they getting to the location? Where are they after administration of the treatment? And do they also leave at a certain time? So those are some of the things that we're looking to get more information on.
these are important items. If you remember, we had looked at a proposal out on the very western edge of town off of Washington Avenue that was a similar situation. And I believe some of these questions are the same ones that came up on that proposal. And these are ones that I think are really important for us to consider. And I wanted to ask the board if there are any other concerns or questions that should be put to the applicants before we move this on to the regular agenda? I don't know if these are pretty much cover the waterfront or if there are others. I know one of them I had, which is on there, was the where do the folks go after treatment? Do they have an area they can stay in? And then how do they get there? Since this is DeWitt Street is, you know, not very close to. I believe there's a Broadway bus that goes in that direction, but I don't know if there's any other way that there's plans to get people to the site.
Right, there's both a BRT and a regular on Broadway, so Broadway's pretty well. So, I know that's an issue on Washington Avenue. People can get there with the service.
I just wanted to add a point of clarification. There's also the request to abandon DeWitt. So DeWitt would be, part of the proposal would include building onto or adjacent to DeWitt Street. So that would, under this proposal, it wouldn't be the city street anymore.
Is it something that the planning board addresses, or is it?
No, not specifically, but just as part of our, as part of the scope of the whole project.
Other questions or items? Okay. So we'll close out the workshop agenda and the workshop meeting and move on to the planning board meeting agenda. And I'll go through the rules of procedure. For the meeting and the public hearing agenda, the presentation first would be by the applicant, and if it's a project that's new and we haven't seen it before, the applicant gets 10 minutes to make the presentation. If it's a project that we've seen before, the applicant has 6 minutes to do the presentation. The board, planning board members then would have questions, clarifications to the applicant. And then after that, if there are any public comments, the public has 3 minutes each person to make his or her comments. If the comments are going to be by a common council member because they represent a larger area, they get 6 minutes. And with public comment, the public had to only those who have signed up in advance to speak will be given the ability to speak. This is a rule of all the city boards, and we encourage any public comments to be also made in writing so that we have a record and so that everybody, whether it be the planning staff, the board, or the public, have easy access to the records. After the public comments, the planning staff will make its recommendations. And sometimes at our discretion, that might come before the public comments. It depends on the issue at hand. And then at the end, the applicant will have a couple of minutes to make any clarifications or any factual issues that came up that might have been inaccurate. So with that, we will go to the first item, which is definitely a project we've seen more than a few times. This is 69 to 85 Sherman Street. It's the Legal Aid Society's proposal to construct an approximately 20,000 square foot parcel to include a parking lot of about 44 parking spaces. And it included the demolition, I think, which has already occurred, of a 2,400 square foot building. And the request is for a waiver on the parking location, a waiver on the street amenities, and we also need to pass on development plan review. Okay, folks, you have 6 minutes.
Hi.
There you go.
There you go, okay. Hi, Mike Robertson, I'm from Lansing Engineering. This is Marshall Kovler, he's from the Legal Aid Society. And Morgan Ruthman, who is on the board of directors of the Legal Aid Society, is here as well tonight. Thank you, everybody, for your time. As mentioned, we were previously here at the board, the October meeting, presenting for the proposed parking lot facility to serve the Legal Aid Society, which is located adjacent on Central Avenue. We're proposing to construct a 44 space parking lot equipped with stormwater facilities to mitigate all of the stormwater runoff and provide the Legal Aid Society with much needed parking to serve the community. The previous meeting in October, I believe the board did approve or declare a negative declaration for seeker. They also approved the waiver for the conditional use permit, the waiver for the parking location within 10 feet of the front property line, and approved the street amenities, a waiver on the street amenities. So tonight we're here to answer any further questions the board or public may have regarding the proposal. And to a quick update, since the last meeting, we have received a sign-off letter from the Department of Water regarding the stormwater design, which was a question at the last meeting. And we also, we had a meeting with on site with the neighbors. We had some concerns that were in attendance at the last meeting as well, with some community members. And I believe the Legal Aid is currently working with them to alleviate their concerns. And I believe that was accomplished at the meeting in November.
Can you say with certainty? You say you believe, but that's kind of.
They are satisfied.
Yes, with certainty.
If I remember correctly, this was the water ran off from the parking lot into the basement walls and has corrosion and destruction.
We met on site on October 31st with Mr. Robertson, Ms. Joy Love, Lillian Moy, the executive director, the neighbors, Mr. Coulter, myself, Mr. O'Connor from the City of Albany Water Department, and discussed in detail the engineering details, all the runoff considerations, and had a very positive, substantive discussion with the neighbors, and they were satisfied with the outcome. And that's this,
Snow as well.
correct, this letter from the cities with this sign off pertaining to the runoff and stormwater management practices was an outcome of that October 31st meeting.
And did that also, pardon the pun, flow to the snow removal issues?
Yes.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, are there anybody who wants to speak on this issue from the public?
No.
Staff?
Yes, I just wanted to second what the applicant has told you. The planning department was there for that meeting as well. They did satisfy the conditions, the neighbors, after the discussion and the back and forth, they did sign off and express their support for it. We had talked about a snow removal plan. At our end, basically, what we would recommend the approval of the DPR and the waivers that are the waivers for the development plan review standards. And also as condition, we would like to have the site plan updated with some of the language for a snow plan. So it could just be notes on the site plan itself. We presented some language here in condition number 2 for it, for the board to review. In discussion, it was, 2 feet or 2 inches of accumulation versus, but we'll let the board decide the amount and the annotated location, or applicants speak to that. But that is one of our conditions for the approval. I would like to, for the record, just correct that the waivers are still outstanding. They need to be approved because we held back due to the DPR not being approved, the development plan review. So they'll have to be voted on alongside the development plan review today.
To get clear, you're asking the board to establish when we think the amount of snow that accumulates needs to be carted away?
In our discussions with the, in the meeting with the applicants, it was established that 2 inches of snow would be, would be stored on site. Anything more would be removed and stored elsewhere. So we're leaving it open to the board if they have an opinion.
Okay,
2 inches?
Yeah.
well, that's for, if it's all plowed, it's going to accumulate. That was the idea, so,
Not that,
so the proposal
you
would
need
be,
2 feet.
if you plow it up, it's gonna be pretty massive, because it's 2 inches over all of the 44 spaces, so they would have to cart away, but they're asking us if we want to make another suggestion.
Here's the language, essentially what we were recommending as a planning staff to put as a note to the site plan, the very last one. But again, it's, the board, if you think it needs to be more or less.
My guess is there must be an engineering standard for that somewhere out there.
Well, what we,
How much snow can be on top of a pile.
right, I mean, it's made, we discussed this at the meeting on site, and if you could flip back to the site plan, there's 5 spots on the southern end of the parking area.
East end.
East
That would
end.
be the east,
Sorry.
on the right side where the contour lines are.
So snow would be pushed in that direction and accumulated to a certain extent that it can hold, and then once it gets, beyond control, it's gonna be removed from the site.
So that whole site isn't, that whole area with contour lines is available for snow
No,
storage?
just the
right
last
there,
5. Yeah.
Correct.
So they're in the parking spaces, not on the.
So
Correct.
what was discussed is we would lose the spaces, but that the snowbank would then just act in the normal course of conduct as would melt and then run off in the ordinary course using the stormwater practices that are on site. That's a low spot right there. There a
Correct, yes.
stormwater catch basin,
Yes.
and that would act as a on-site snowbank and storage, facility that if there was an ability to maintain that in that location, it would be fine. But if it really started to encroach more, then we talk about off-site removal.
Right.
But if you zoom in there was a note, I don't know if, did you?
That's the old plan.
That's the old plan. There was a note annotating a basically banked parking for snow storage or banked snow storage. Just to mitigate any concern. And one of the outcomes of the meeting as well with our neighbors was, mutual recognition that this is actually going to be a substantial improvement from the existing conditions. Existing conditions has quite a bit of a topographic, sort of drop down from Sherman Street towards their property. And this is going to, help to redirect that to the appropriate storm catch basins.
But I think I'm still stuck. Are you saying that anything over 2 inches, stressing the inches part, will be carted away?
So that condition wasn't discussed at our October 31st meeting, and
Okay.
so this is a condition I think that's open for discussion right now with the board.
Well, I think we're sort of looking to you guys to determine what would be the requisite amount of snow that you can actually handle on site in that snowbank area, and then at what point you do hauling services.
I understand the question. And I think it would be useful to look at the total size of the parking lot. What's the total size of the parking lot?
Well, it's about,
22, about
19.
22,000 square feet.
the parking lots, I think, close to half an acre. 20,000 square feet. But
I think the real question is, how much snow can that, let's say the right side of the parking lot, with the topo kind of slanting down, how much snow can be stored there, and not have a negative impact upon the neighboring properties? And at that point, any kind of additional snowfall will have to be carted off, right?
Well,
Yeah, that's the.
That's what we're trying to determine, like, what is.
Yeah.
So we should be able to calculate the cubic feet of snow on the entire lot compared with how much, how tall that same amount of cubic feet of snow would be.
Right, so
by parking.
2 inches of snow is 1/6 of a foot, 20,000 square feet. That's a 370 cubic yard yield, assuming 5 spaces that are 8 feet wide by 18 feet deep is 720 surface area square feet divided by, call it 3 essentially for a 3-foot high pile of snow. So that would be, to be frank, easily stored on site.
So about 3 feet.
It would be 3 feet high. 2 inches of snowfall would cover about a pile this high of snow and 5 spaces.
Okay.
So if it were, 3 times that amount, 6 inches of snowfall, for instance, it would be about that high. And that's not uncommon. So,
and just to clarify on that too, as well, all snow that's stored on the paved surface will run off to the stormwater system. It's not going to run off to the adjacent properties. And which it currently does now.
Is that how, you said now it runs to adjacent properties?
That was the complete.
No,
that's it.
I know that.
Right.
But my question is, how are you so you, with these changes, you're going to change the slope to allow it to run into the.
Correct.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's more than one catch basin, when they build the lot itself, there'll be a couple of them, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, there's 2 catch basins and then also a kind of a catch basin. It's a bioretention filtera system, which can take a certain amount of water as well.
Okay, for questions, comments? Okay, then, we have a couple of proposals, recommendations. I'll take them one at a time. Recommended action for a waiver of development standard for the parking location itself. I would entertain a motion to approve. Is there a motion?
So,
Moved by Martin Hall and seconded by Chris Ellis. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. Second, recommended action is a waiver of the development standard concerning street amenities. And again, this was explained pretty substantially in our previous meetings, where there will be some alternate places where benches will be stored, will be developed. And but there will be vegetation on the site in the frontage, is that correct?
Yes.
So I'll entertain a motion to waive the development standard for street amenities.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Vanessa and seconded by Chris. Further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Passed unanimously. And the final recommendation is the approval of the development plan itself with the conditions as mentioned. First, prior to the issuance of a building permit, the plan sheet MP1, which is the maintenance protection of traffic, shall be revised as deemed necessary by the traffic engineering division of the city. And the second condition, which is the one we talked about the most, is prior to the issue of a building permit, the following note shall be added to the site plan where, which is prior to the issuance of a building permit, where the snowfall does not exceed 2 inches. Accumulation within a 24-hour period, snow may be stored on the site. Where the snowfall exceeds that amount, accumulation within 24 hours, snow should be removed from the site for storage elsewhere. Now, given the analysis that was just done, I don't know if this is something we want to amend. But it did show with a quick calculation that the 5 spaces that would be used up would more than handle the snow accumulation, even if it's above 2 inches. Before we get into that condition, is there any comment to change that? You want to keep it at that? Any other thoughts from the planning board? Okay, so it will stand. I'll entertain a motion to move by Martin for condition 2.
Second.
And condition 1, and seconded by Vanessa. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, passed unanimously. Thank you very much. I know it's been a long process. Appreciate it. And is Lillian's retired? Yes. So
Not
this
yet,
is-
not yet.
What, she has
still
3
in?
more weeks left?
A couple more weeks, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick Durango's
Nick is-
taking,
Sure, that's-
so, yeah,
Great choice.
yep, thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 67 Livingston Avenue, which is Clinton Square Studios. This is a construction of approximately 11,000 square foot, 6-story building, which includes 67 residential units and 2,100 square feet of retail. And the board is asked to do demolition and development plan review. This project received prior approval. And I will be recusing myself on this project because I am a member of the Capital Repertory Board. And the applicant will be providing one floor for Capital Repertory Board, a Capital Repertory and other people that come in from out of town. And Martin will chair the meeting henceforth.
Okay, thank you. Tina, we have a presentation.
Thank you, Chairman, Mr. Acting Chairman. My name is Daniel Hirschberg, the firm of Hirschberg and Hirschberg. I'm here today representing Clinton Square Studios LLC, and a principal that's in the office, in the audience is David Shara. With me is Dan Sherman, or Dan Sanders, who's the architect. Dan Sherman got retired from the city. From Dan Sanders, who was the architect of the project. This projects seem very, you should be very well acquainted with. We're at the board approximately 15 months ago, and the board granted us an approval. Since that time, it has expired, and we're now back in front of another application which we're going forward with for affordable housing grants. If you want to go through the next slide, I think I can. There's the location. I think you're all familiar with it. It is a existing building on the site, which is in pretty poor condition. Next, that's the existing condition plan, and it shows that building on it. The rest of the site is vacant, primarily with gravel and some vegetation. Next plan, that's the site plan where it shows the building filled up. There is a alley on the north side. Stormwater management facility is back there. We have some areas where we will have ramps and steps into the building shown. And next, An issue was raised by the Albany County Planning Board when they granted their approval about transportation. And I want to point out, when this was raised last time, we did a transportation demand plan, and we showed that there's adequate parking in the area. We counted parking spots in the area. The applicant also has entered in the universal access program with CDTA and will write on a very good bus route. The goal here is to attract people who will walk or bike to work because of our proximity to the downtown area. And next. And this is the data which shows that we would have between 131 and 156 parking spots available at the times of the day when most of the spots were filled. Next. Demolition review shows the demolition plan of the building and everything else on the site. We also have to remove portions of sidewalk to get utilities in place. Next. There's the building. That's the view from Livingston Avenue and the view from Broadway. The building is vacant and it's not in very good condition. Next. The SWIP plan, stormwater management plan was a key element here. We went through with the Department of Water Supply. They approved a system. This is a redevelopment site, believe it or not, because it did have some development on previously. We're using a hydrodynamic separator, which separates silt and material from the water before it discharges it into the sewer. And we're storing enough water in a very large cast in place concrete tank. Next. The landscaping plan, we provided a required number of street trees and required number of street amenities. Next. This is the first floor plan. Maybe I'll let Dan take over now if he wants to walk us through. I have the floor plan from elevated.
Thanks, Dan. So the first floor plan basically entails a section of the unexcavated area to the west on the left side, and on the easternmost half of the building is going to be a combination where you see non-residential in the orange space. That would be retail area. The blue is a shared circulation, and the yellow, again, these drawings are really the same ones we're using for the state grant that we're going for. So that represents the residential common area, utility area, circulation, garbage, and some utility room storage.
I might point out there's a large bike storage area.
Yes.
The yellow area at the front on the Livingston Avenue side, on the left-hand side, that large area is labeled for bike storage. So we have plenty of bike storage on the site. We want to encourage people to bike.
So that's on the Broadway entrance. Also would be provided into the retail area at 2 points. There's an entrance into the building and then the retail commercial area on the lower right section of the building. It's a significantly sloping site. We'll show you the impact of that on the upper floor on the next floor plan. Second floor is the main entrance into the building, will be on the west side where you can see that blue section with the vestibule and the side entrance into the building at that point. Because of the sloping site, that would be a ramped access from Livingston, and already we're above Broadway for the remaining and significantly sloping to the west. The orange areas will be for the Capitol Rep apartments, studio apartments, and the yellow areas will be the common areas for the building and mainly the residences on the upper floors. You see the handicap symbol, the ADA symbol on one of the units, but those would be for the market rate apartments on the second floor. Affordable, I'm sorry.
Market rate affordable apartments.
Sorry. Affordable apartments on the second floor.
What is the room in the lower left?
Community room, and that's a requirement for any program which is what the funding source would be requiring. 15 square feet per person would be required in terms of determining the areas for those community rooms. Typical upper floor, third floors being shown here, 4 through 6 are similar. The corridor designation again, and then the apartments around the perimeter, 2 sets of stairs, elevator, and some common areas for the residents. The elevations would be from Broadway, first the east elevation with a commercial store front area on the ground level. We've modified the first floor, ground level, I should say, apartments to the right side by adding the transom windows. There were some comments from HRC to give that a little bit more of a commercial look, even though those are apartments. And then all the remaining upper level floors are for the residents. The materials, I think you've seen this before, so the brick and hardy panel. Now this is showing along Livingston, and the slope is fairly significant, working with that, but turning the corner with as much storefront as we would be allowed within that interior. So again, with Aaron's comments, and we did want to increase some transparency along Livingston, and then as you climb to the west, you can see on the left side, the far left is going to be where the ramp starts to get to the side entrance of the building. Not too much to show here, except again, the west elevation, we did add a series of 4 windows on the right side of the drawing to get more transparency. Again, this was from Aaron's comments, and so that would be a second set of windows into the living rooms of the apartments. And then the HVAC, this is all going to be an electric building, so those would be the condensers mounted on that level, but that's pretty much hidden from view. It's into the alleyway. And then the north elevation as well would be the remaining HVAC units, and again, mostly hidden, but the residential units above are noted on the 5 levels there.
I think that completes our direct presentation. Chair Chance, any question?
Let's see, I have a quick question on the entrance being on the side. I forgot exactly how that might work. It seems like it might be dark and hidden. Is there a security or weather protection for people walking?
We are looking at providing, this was also a comment with HCR, of an awning coming out from that side projecting. So we didn't have it done in time for tonight's meeting, but we can follow up presenting that. So that would be, more of a statement that this is where the entrance is as you're walking up Livingston. Obviously, that would be projecting out from the side, but I didn't want to, we're working on the design and basically be a canopy that would extend out the building about 4 feet.
And there's space along that wall
Right.
for some building mounted wall packs to light that ramp area.
Correct.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, just one quick on the trash removal. How is that going to work? Because your trash compactors and whatnot are kind of in the center of the building, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be removed from the trash compactor out through the alleyway and out to Broadway.
Okay.
Yeah,
So trash pickup will be accomplished along Broadway?
yes. The hours and arrangements of it haven't really been made yet, but it'll be by private hauler. Obviously, the city doesn't provide services for the apartments, so it'll be by private hauler that will arrange that, remove the trash at convenient time. Usually compactor reduces the volume significantly so that the length of time that the truck has to be parked on Broadway will be very minimal.
All right, so the bottom line is on pickup day, when the truck arrives, someone's going to wheel out through the entranceway to Broadway and they cart it away, and then there you go. Is that correct?
That's correct, and then they will compactor back into the unit, into the building.
Okay.
So a question on the square footage, can you confirm what the square footage is of the actual retail use itself?
The retail,
Yes. Is that the,
the orange area, I don't have it in front of me. Sorry,
We
is
said
it
2,105
Yeah,
square
about
feet.
2,100.
okay, so is that including, because from on there, I think it's 15.8. Are you also including some of the shared area in that?
I think, I don't know, I thought we boxed out the orange and there was 2,105 square feet.
Yeah, we'll
Okay, I mean, if that,
review that.
if that number, the 2,105, that's
Right.
what we have from the application, we just want to confirm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what that's supposed to represent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Should we do a staff report next or public comments? Yeah, okay. What is the staff report comments?
So as the applicant had stated, this had come in front of the board in 2021. The prior appearances, they did get approval with condition in 21. There were some outstanding conditions still on the prior approval. This is being treated as a new project because of the updates on the USDO. It is a DRI project. Albany County Planning Board has provided some recommendations here as well. One is more advisory in its nature, speaking to the ADA parking spaces. We will communicate that to the applicant as well. This application was circulated to all the other city departments. We are proposing an approval with conditions. Most of those conditions speak to the comments we've received from other city departments. There was a seeker done prior, and that seeker is still valid. And then we just have it.
Recommendations, okay. Were there any members of the public signed up to speak?
No.
Okay, thank you. So then I guess we, unless there are any other questions or thoughts, or comments, we can move on to the proposed actions. So the first thing we have here is recommended action to approve demolition. Motion.
So
Second. Moved by Cornisha and seconded by Christopher. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. The second recommended action is development plan review, which is recommended to be approved with conditions. I'll go ahead and read the conditions. They're fairly minor, most of them, right?
They are, and they all essentially come from departmental comments that we received so far.
Okay. So condition 1. Any encroachments into the public right of way shall require approval by the city and an agreement with the city that the property owner shall accept any and all liability for accidents or damage occurring in the public right of way due to encroachment or related activity. Condition 2, pursuant to the zoning code, the project may increase the height of the building by 1 story, provided that at least 20% of all new dwelling units are rent or deed restricted, so that they are affordable to households earning no more than 80% of the area median household income for the city of Albany. Condition 3, prior to the issuance of the building permit, plans shall be revised to provide bicycle parking as required by the. Condition 4, prior to the issuance of the building permit, site plan shall be revised so that ground-mounted mechanical equipment is screened from adjacent properties and all public rights of way as required by the zoning code. Condition 5, prior to the issuance of a building permit, plans shall be revised to incorporate flexible porous paving with the MISDOT specification number in place of tree wells shown. Condition 6, prior to the issuance of building permit, remove all notations from the plans regarding, quote, for municipal approval only, not intended for construction, unquote. Condition 7, prior to the issuance of the building permit, revise plans to show replacement of sidewalk panels, driveway apron, and curbing along Livingston Avenue from Broadway to the easterly property line of 75 Livingston Avenue. And finally, condition 8, prior to the issuance of the building permit, a transportation demand management plan shall be approved by the chief planning official pursuant to the zoning. And with that, I'll request a motion.
Someone? Second.
So moved by Glenisa Giard and seconded by Christopher Ellis. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
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 It's approved unanimously.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. And with that, we are finished. Well, go back to Al.
Okay, we are at the hearing agenda level. And we have the first proposal, which is 64th Avenue. The applicant is Zach Yen. And the zoning district is in the CUFS, which is the mixed use form-based South End. The proposal is to amend the zoning map, to change the zoning classification of the property from MUFS to I1, which is light industrial. And this would be a recommendation, since it's a proposed zoning change, this would be eventually a recommendation to the common council for final approval or rejection. So you have 10 minutes, sir.
Very good. Good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come here tonight and make the presentation. I'm looking forward to going over the project and hoping that I can answer any questions that may come up. So what we're looking to accomplish is really change the zoning map for this property from MUFS to I1, I believe. The next slide, please. The property has been used by International Electronic Machines for almost 25 years as light industrial, and it's adjacent to many light industrial properties right next to them. Historically, the property has been used as a light industrial application for the last 40 years. So we were somewhat surprised to see that at some point recently it got changed to MUFS. As you can see by looking at the project location, there are a lot of neighboring manufacturing and other light industrial companies nearby. The next slide, please. So part of the zoning, we are hoping that the new owner, which is an established Albany supplier just a few blocks away, would have the opportunity to move here and expand. And the upside is that we would hope to keep a great local business that has been serving the community for almost 5 or 6 decades, stay local, employs the local people, and takes over this property as the next steward, which would be great. The next slide, please. The character of the neighborhood. The property, the neighboring property, many of them are already in I1 zone. The requested zone change is very consistent with the neighborhood, and actually the zone change would improve the appearance of the neighborhood. So all in all, the proposed use and zone will be a good zone slash use that we are requesting. Next slide, please. The impact on the environment. So we did, perhaps it was not required, but we did quick noise study. We took real samples of the noise. The traffic study was also done just to take a look how many cars go by and what would be the impact. A number of other studies were done. I am an engineering company and I love to do these kind of things. So I went a little bit overboard. And the good thing is that there was nothing adverse found. The highway nearby is actually 75 to 80 dBs, which is significant noise contribution to that whole neighborhood. And the proposed zone change would not impact that. And we think it's around somewhere around 50 to 60 dB. Next slide, please. The neighborhood support, I think over the last 2.5 decades, it has been very important to us that we continue to work with the neighborhood. I have reached out and had multiple meetings with the DRI folks, and they assured me that I have their full support. I reached out to St. John's Church right across, and they have been great neighbors, and they assured me that they see this as a viable project. Albany Housing Authority has been wonderful to work with for the last 25 plus years. And we look forward to actually having this support. So last but not least, we have support of Derek Johnson, who's our local council member. And I had good conversations with him. We all feel that the proposed zone change would save the city a lot of money. Like every time we have a use change, we go through a lot of hearings to take up all that. And that has been going on for the last 4 decades now. So perhaps it's a good time to make the zone change permanent. Next slide. So the necessity, like I said, the adjacent properties are already in Ivan, it would match. And the zoning would nicely flow across. There are certainly economic development grounds. We would be keeping a great local business. It takes tens and tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of dollars to attract new businesses to Albany. And I cannot see Jerry and Tracy, who are sitting right behind me as the owners of the new business. We keep them and save hundreds of thousands of dollars of economic development costs that would be incurred for bringing another business from out of town. Let's see, the next slide. Yeah, the parking. So we have, when I'm operating the business for 35 employees there, there is plenty of parking available on site, as well as off-street parking. We never had a problem in the last many decades, and the new owner actually will have fewer employees. So we do not foresee they having any problem. And on the lower right-hand corner of the building, right next to that red anchor, there is additional parking that is part of the property, but it's not utilized at all. So in summary, we see that your approval for the zone change would be a very welcome to the existing owners and to the new owners, and it would bring that neighborhood back to its glory. The new owners are looking to use it for light industrial. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars of electrical work that we did, and they would take advantage of that. There is a lot of plumbing work that we did. We brought air to various portions of the building. They'll take advantage of that. So quite frankly, while there were many, many other offers over the years, I see that the J.J. Curran Company is really the future of this property, and they would be the best steward. Looking forward to moving in there, pending the zoning approval. Any questions, please?
Questions from the board?
Are you intending to use the existing building or build a new one?
We would continue to use the existing building 100% as is.
I was down there and looked at the building. It's in the basically in good shape. The lot's big. But I also saw the property that is currently being used for the business, and the buildings The square footage is about the same.
Yes.
One of the other things that I noticed on the zoning map, if we can go back to the colored zoning map. And yes, the board takes a look, the areas south of the star, that area is currently, no, that's southeast, directly south of the star, or kind of right, below it. The proposal is to also change that to light industrial. Right now, that area is part of the, what is it, MUFC? Is that right? Oh, yeah, it's part of the form-based area. So I guess my concern is that you're almost creating a spot zone, because you're trying to create that gray building to be light industrial, but to do that, you've got to extend it down. And what you're doing is you're creating a light industrial zone where 3 small streets come together. And that kind of doesn't make sense to me, because you're actually trying to figure a way to make it adjacent to the existing industrial area. And although that big pink area is all industrial, what you see, most of it is just roads and empty space. The only actual industry right close to it is the one right there with the arrows. Just some comments that I had when I was down there.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this would work. Oh, it does work. So if I may point out that this is 787, it's going up and down. And this space is really right underneath 787.
But it's also where 3 neighborhood small streets come together.
Right.
And there's also a sidewalk that goes to that green space there, which is a park.
Right. So without having this stand out all by itself is like it has been used for light industrial all along. So is there any way to do this conversion or having zone change without having to do this? Because everything else is all light industrial, And quite frankly, when the zoning change took place, we were not even consulted. Next thing we know, the zone is changed to something else. Otherwise, we would have requested at that time, a number of years ago, that this is converted to light industrial.
Well, the issue wasn't consulted because the new zoning ordinance had plenty of major, tons of meetings and over a year and a half of the document. So it's not an issue of consulting each and every property owner. It was a citywide effort over the course of many years and many meetings. Any other questions, comments? Yeah, because one of the, I had also a question that had to do with the recommendation versus what was mentioned by the applicant concerning the Albany Housing Authority.
If you can go to the slide that showed the parking. So I have a question. Is this a similar layout that had been used for like the prior businesses that were there?
Yes. So we have parked 25 cars roughly right there for the last 2.5 decades. We have parked car before here. And 15 years before that, this area has been used for parking. And we have parked cars at times for here. So the answer is yes.
Okay. I noticed when I went to the site, that's what kind of raises the question. So on the left-hand side, the blue box to the left of the building itself, there's no curb cut there, but what I did notice is there's a curb cut that's kind of right in front of the building itself. Was that used at some point for parking or delivery, or did that change over time to was something changed with the building?
Yeah, I think that's 40 years before that I knew about the building. So we used to access it right from here and park it like right there. And this area this parking lot is accessible very nicely from this whole area.
I'm sorry, where did you say you accessed the lot from?
Right here. There's actually loading docks here, so there's all the provisions are made for 2 loading docks, and there was loading dock here, and you can easily back into here or bring a vehicle back here and unload objects. Yeah, and that has been the historic use for 40 years that I know.
Okay, thank you.
Other issues or questions that the board has? Okay, any comments by the public?
Yes, we have 2 speakers.
Okay, before they go on, I just wanted to reiterate that each speaker has 3 minutes, and to the speakers, Jasleen will act as the timer, and she will give you a warning when 30 seconds are available.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Benita Lord-Jow. I'm an Albany Riverfront Collaborative member. I'm an outdoor Afro leader. It's a national organization that gets people of color in the outdoors. I'm an environmental justice advocate and a bicycle advocate. I have worked for the New York State Department of Health for 32 years. I just retired in 2019, and I've volunteered in this community for all the 30 some odd years I've lived here. I really care about this community. I'm offering an objection to the rezoning because of all the volunteer work I've done in this community and the abuses I've seen and the environmental issues I've seen occur in this community. We are the capital of the state. The Hudson River is really valuable, a valuable asset. From the Riverfront Collaborative perspective, we've been fighting to connect the community to the river and protect the river and to educate people about the river. And with climate change, that's a really big issue for us to start to, there may have been industrial areas around the Hudson River, but we shouldn't continue to assault the river and to continue to change these zoning things to allow this to continue to happen. We need to start thinking cleaner and wiser in our community. So the community has already had serious environmental assaults upon it. I think this will open the floodgates. If you allow him to make that particular, to rezone it as light industrial, I mean, one, our community has a lot of drugs and substance abuse issues. It allows controlled substance dispensaries to be in our communities. We've got liquor stores. We've got all the negative stuff there already. So why do we want to open up, turn it into light industry so that now you can have controlled substance dispensaries, marijuana manufacturing facilities, heavy commercial services there? I mean, when you look at what's happening as a reference with all the trucks that are going through, I mean, when I looked at the kind of business that wants to come there, yeah, it's light industry and it's wood and they're doing floors, but you're gonna have to have big trucks come through to bring the wood in to do the floors and for them to manufacture what they're doing. But it also allows other kinds of industries in that we will not have control over once we allow light industry to come in. They claim that they will create internships and hire in the community. They've been here, they're on Pearl Street. I don't know anybody in South End or Arbor Hill that works for them. And if they're gonna do internships, why haven't they done it? So that, I mean, they'll say whatever they have to on the form to,
30 seconds.
thank you. They'll say whatever they have to on the form to get the approval. But what I'm thinking about is the future and our kids and our community and building a cleaner Albany, a Albany that we can all live in and that we can reconnect to the river and protect our city.
Thank you, Mr. Bourdain. Mr. White.
Yes, thank you so much for having us here today. We've been fighting environmental racism, environmental injustice for a long time in our community in the South Bend. And for anything but in the industry to come in and say they want to locate themselves in our community, it's just so objectionable. As our apprentice, as Benita stated, we've been fighting that fight for 10 or more years. We have over 1,000 diesel trucks coming through that community every single day. There's the bomb trains in the backyard, there's the diesel trucks in the front yard. And you want to bring more diesel trucks within our community? That's unacceptable. That's totally unacceptable. Obviously, you don't live in this community, so therefore, you could care less what goes on in our community. But we're here as concerned citizens of our community, and we care about our people, as Benita stated. We do not want to continue this environmental injustice. And I really, really want you to hear that. I want the Common Council to hear that. I'm sorry to see that my Common Council member voted to let this go forward, knowing the injustices that's in our community. I'm really, really disappointed in that. I spoke to the Johnsons last night, who was going to come here and be objectionable too. But obviously they're not here, and he states that they support that. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And I think Benita said enough. I've said enough. I think we'll fight this until the very end. We will not let this project go forward in our communities. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired of environmental injustice in our communities. So thank you so much for having us. We look forward to answering any questions or, have further in this conversation, and we'll go everywhere to do that.
And
Thank
we
you,
will
Mr. White.
mobilize the community.
For sure.
Any other speakers?
Thank you.
Do we have the opportunity to say something?
You will at the end after the presentation by the planning staff.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Avi is presenting for the planning staff.
Do you want to pull up the other one? Yeah. I'll just, so everyone here has the other presentation information that kind of goes through the request here as well. It's a lot of the same information.
I don't know if the board hasn't had an opportunity to see this, it's pretty comprehensive. But I know that one of your recommendations is to hold off for now in terms of any decision tonight or any recommendation to the common council.
Yeah, to skip ahead to that, we presented to give the neighborhood an opportunity to provide comment and feedback, as well as the housing authority, and there was a response from everyone that they would like some time to be able to provide that feedback. So our ultimate recommendation would be to defer to the next meeting at least. I do just want to go through some of the basic information here. Like I said, there's a lot, so I'll kind of skip around, but can you go?
I'm having a little trouble sharing that, just a minute.
Okay.
Well, I think while you're doing that, I mean, one of the questions I have is that that Mr. Mian had mentioned that the office that they've met with the housing authority, and he represented that the housing authority had no negative comments and is supporting this. But you're saying that there has to be recommend that additional time should be allowed for public comment. And clearly the housing authority is the closest of the neighbors because of not only the large buildings, but most of the townhouses that are very, very close to the site. So I'm kind of wondering, is this a matter of intensity? Is it a matter of hearsay?
I guess.
Or have you gotten direct comments from the housing authority saying we need more time, we want more time to review this?
I was gonna ask just what's in writing.
Yeah, I don't believe at this time we have anything from the housing authorities stating that they were in favor.
How about Councilman Johnson or Pastor Johnson, first lady over at
So.
Kojic Church? We have those in writing.
No, so they, per the process of notices were sent out to the community. But due to the holidays, we expect, and the notices are in the Times Union, the postcards are sent to housing authority, but
This
that's
this is not about the planning staffs.
No, right, but I don't think the community members have been able to provide comments due to holidays, but the ones that do exist that they've mentioned that they might have talked to, we haven't received anything in written.
Yeah, to your point, anything that's been provided by the applicant stating support, will be requesting something just to substantiate that, like we would do with any other application.
Okay, thanks.
Slide 5. Just wanted to go over quickly the actual zoning map, because it does get a little confusing. So kind of to Al's point here, the area that has the red hatch marks. So that entire area would be rezoned for the application and the request. I know there had been some confusion from some of the public and others about it being just the building itself. So I just want to clarify that it's the only parcel there is the one that includes the building, but the other areas, which includes part of 787 and where the other streets, Green and Church and Vine, I believe it is, meet, would be included in this proposed rezone.
But they're all public property, right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. There's
Other than
no.
that one piece.
Yeah. So 64th Ave is the only individual parcel as part of this. There's other public property, whether it's owned and controlled by the city or the state or DOT.
So I guess my question is, I'm just trying to phrase it. What is next to the left? As you go from where they're looking to rezone to the MUCU, because it looks like that's mixed use and it looks like it's in a.
Correct. So
it's mixed use where they're now currently.
Yes. Can we go to the next slide actually? It might be a little easier to see on the next one.
Thank you.
Yeah. So hopefully it's a little easier to see. Yeah, anything in that like tan lighter color is the mixed use form-based South End district. So including the area to the left, like you were just talking about, and then the area underneath where the red hatch marks are.
So would this be, just looking at this, my initial, and maybe council or someone else can, or the staff can help me with this, it looks like it could be an issue of spot zoning because everything surrounding it is mixed use. And you're pulling out a small piece of that mixed use for light industrial.
Yeah, it's always something we want to be cognizant of, you know, whether it's spot zoning or not. The states doesn't really define spot zoning specifically in terms of prescribing a set amount of acres or square feet.
It won't do that, but you don't want to carve, the purpose is to not carve out a specific piece or parcel of land for a specific zone. It's about looking at everything at once and not just picking out a piece and say, we're gonna zone this here for this reason and this here for this reason. It has to make sense. And so for me, looking at that little piece being jutted out and everything else around it being mixed use, it looks on its face that it can be spot zoning to me because everything behind it is light industrial. And we're taking this little piece of the mixed use to make it light industrial, which will only affect only one person.
I think the underlying point you're making might very well be true. I think that's what the planning board will ultimately be looking through to make that recommendation. Just from reviewing it, just speaking in terms of my opinion from going through it, I don't think this would constitute spot zoning because the proposal would be connecting it to another area that's of the same zoning district. I think you have a point in terms of how it can potentially either work with or impact in a negative way the development patterns in terms of having a cohesive flow of the mixed use form-based south end. But generally when you have an area that is or could be made adjacent to another zoning district, it's generally not considered spot zoning.
Yeah, but it's very far from adjacent, I'm gonna be honest with you, because the stars where that property is. And there's usually generally what we've done in the past since I've been here, now prior to that, I don't know. But in the past, like we expanded zoning zoning districts because it's across the street and it makes sense. It affected everybody who was on that parcel. Here, we're only affecting one person. That's it. So I understand you're saying that it being adjacent, but the law doesn't care about whether or not it's adjacent. We're looking at whether or not it makes sense. And if we're affecting one person that's far away from where that light industrial zone ends, I'm not sure if it makes sense.
It also creates kind of a landlocked piece of mixed use there just to the left.
Exactly.
So that zoning seems to fall apart a little bit.
Exactly. There was a reason why they made that whole parcel mixed use when they changed over the zoning. And you're right, it does sort of lock that little piece in. And then you have light industrial and now you have this big old block of mixed use.
Yeah, I don't think the intent isn't to show whether or not, based on this, whether it's a, has positive or negative impacts at this point. We're just stating that by drawing the line down, it would be connecting it to the light industrial. That's all that's meant by this map.
Right, but if not for that line though, it really would be a spot because all it is that star. Because there's nothing else in between that star and the light industrial there. It's only affecting one property and that one property is way up there, not anything else in between there and not anything else surrounding it.
Correct, yeah, I just want to make sure that everyone was clear that it's also including the areas to the south of it, that's all. Were there other questions on the map itself?
No, not for me.
Go to the next one. So we have kind of compiled a few different projects and other things going on within that neighborhood that should be considered by the planning board in their recommendation. One of the examples is the South End Connector, which runs directly adjacent to the property. We've kind of outlined some of the other stakeholders and projects and properties that are within this area as well to consider how it may or may not impact them.
The purple line is the South End Connector, right?
Correct, yeah, the purple line that runs pretty much along or underneath 787. If you can go to the next slide. Again, this is kind of part of the South End Connector Phase 2, but it does, the reason we kind of pick this out is because the star on the bottom of the image here is representing where this site 64th Ave is. And as you can see, just above it, the area in gray kind of is outlining a planned area for like a public plaza, community gatherings, having like food trucks and other public amenities. So being cognizant of that as well in the in any recommendation that's put forward. You can quickly go through the next couple slides, but they all kind of are reiterating the same couple things that are identified in different plans that we have gone through. You can go to the next one as well. This is phase 3 of that same project, South End Connector, which will include like public art and trying to make the area more accessible to the public in the neighborhood and really drawing that connection to the river itself as well. Here is just a planned park, Wakanda Heritage Park. This is outlined in the proposed local waterfront revitalization as one of the projects that's outlined. So there's several projects that are going to go forward, and this is one of them.
And so that star is where
The star and the building right next to the billboard is 64th Ave.
And the circles are Wakanda, right?
Correct, yep. Yeah, the church is just to the left of it on the other side of the block. The next slide, again, similar. This is from the Brownfield Opportunity area program. So kind of outlines some different areas that are within the same vicinity. Again, the area with the star on it is 64th Ave. And you can see, the plan generally is talking about making enhanced connections and focusing on specific areas to improve and create more formalized open space areas for like public gatherings.
Then the Island Creek Park is already there.
Yeah.
That already exists.
Correct, yeah. This is speaking to some enhancements that would be planned there at some point. Go to slide 14. So we just want to kind of outline to the planning board, long-term implications of the zoning change. So just realizing that the zoning change, all the applicants proposing specifically for a business that's really into the light manufacturing definition in our code, which falls under which is allowed under the light industrial zoning district. If it's rezoned to light industrial, it encompasses other uses as well. And there are, you can go to slide 16. So there are, we're able to move.
So we move Roland over to the other side. Hang on, Roland.
So we have two tables. This first one here is just to break down uses that are allowed in the light industrial or the I-1 zoning district, but not in the mixed use form-based South End zoning district. So the first column is the actual land use classification as you'd see it in the permitted use table. Second column is just stating showing that it's not permitted in the zoning district as it currently stands and how it would be allowed, whether as of right, conditionally permitted, or as an accessory use under the light industrial. So just going through the table, we identified 20 uses that are currently not allowed under the MUFS that would be allowed to some degree under the light industrial. If you go to the next slide, please. This kind of shows the inverse. So these are uses that are allowed in the MUFS, but not in the I-1. There are less of them, but 9 of the 11 uses are residential. So, as zoning typically works to separate incompatible uses, you're not allowed to have a variety of residentially related uses in the light industrial zoning district. So 9 of the 11 uses in this table relate to the residential. Go to slide 19. So these are the 9 criteria that are set forth within the USDO zoning ordinance. That really establish like how to evaluate the proposed zoning map amendment or a rezone. So we kind of look to you guys to make those connections from what's being provided by the applicants, information provided by staff, and information that's kind of put forward in the various plans we have. So from like the comprehensive plan to some of these other projects that are ongoing as well. I think we kind of spoke to that in terms of looking to see if it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, compatible with existing or proposed uses that surround the subject land and things of that sort. But we just want to identify the 9 specific criteria that are put forward. I mean, these are what the Common Council would be considering as well, but the recommendation from the planning board should be based on these 9 criteria. Go to slide 22. Let's wrap it up here, but looking at some of the potential benefits that were cited by the applicant, just kind of as a summary of everything, allow for the reuse of an existing vacant building. Applicant wants to connect this to the other industrial areas to the south of it, such as South Pearl Street and the port. They mentioned potential for employment opportunities and the opportunity for a local business to stay in this area and to expand. And then on the other side, looking at some potential negative impacts, would allow for more intensive commercial industrial uses within close proximity to housing and some of the other uses in the area. And by that, we just mean that it allows for other uses aside from just light manufacturing or anything that's allowed conditionally or as of right per the permitted use table. Potential traffic or parking impacts, I think there is more information that will certainly be needed from the applicant just to take a look at how many vehicles are are typically used in the business, how they really be accessing the different roadways, how often they are on the street or if they're typically left on site, things like that. And also just looking to see, presumably we need an easement or some type of other license agreement because the access to the back loading docks doesn't really have access to the right of way. It's really city property that's there. That's probably more of an issue for farther down the line, but just to note it. And then kind of outlining that, we have to do, take a deeper dive into the different plans and, whether it's the comprehensive plan or other projects that are ongoing, but kind of identifying that this may be inconsistent with the attempt to create connections from the community and the neighborhood to the waterfront itself. So I think that's something that the planning board certainly needs to take a look at, and that I would, advise the applicant to, they have information to kind of show why that would not be the case, to certainly provide that information to the planning board. I'll end with that, and if there's any questions for staff.
I guess one of the things I would have been concerned with, which you I think touched on, and that would be if the business eventually leaves the site or whatever, for whatever reason isn't there. After a while, you've got a rezone situation that creates other potential, as you mentioned in the chart, which is on here.
Correct. Yeah, there would be, there's like 20 other uses that are not currently allowed that would be allowed. Aside from what they're, well, one of them including for what they're requesting, but 19 separate ones.
I'd also mention to the board, it came in late, but there's also a letter that's now, I think, in the record. You can go into the, what do you call it, not Dropbox, but the other.
The planning OneDrive, the public access to the public project folders.
That's a letter from Scott Townsend, who's the chair of the revitalization, 787 revitalization program.
Albany River Collaborative.
Right, it's the same organization, the collaborative that Mr. White and Ms. Dale spoke about. Okay, yes, sir.
So I understand the balance that we're talking about here, or potential imbalance. I just want to say that out loud. I also want to ask the question, we talk about the riverfront. I look at what's in between this building in the water, a whole bunch of stuff, including a major connecting artery with tens of thousands of cars that come and provide bad air for those residents at all times that we've all talked about. We talked about the bomb trains for quite some time and the pollution. I know it's bad. I live there. So are we able to talk about what the business would actually incrementally add? Are we able to say how many trucks come in and out in the regular course of business? Are we able to talk about what type of environmental impact pollution said trucks would bring? How many employees do you have? With the move, how many employees would you intend to have? Have you considered community hiring? If so, what is your plan? I think, there are some things that we probably could look at and measure to look at the whole scope of a thing like this, as opposed to, I feel like we're really narrow right now. And I'm frankly, like I'm right now on Google Maps looking at everything else that's in between this building and the water and being like, this is, but I understand because I lived it. I know what it is.
I think part for me is what gives me the impact for me is not the business that's looking to move in there once the zone is complete, if we get to that point. My issue is looking at what could go in there if this business decides to no longer be in business. And the other things, if you go back to that chart, all of these other things that could be in there next to a church, next to residents only a block away on either side, whether you're going up towards Pearl Street, you're going towards in the direction of Arbor Hill and North Albany. All of those things that can be right in that spot in the future, we don't know what that future holds. And that's where I have a concern. So yes, this business may look desirable now, but what happens if this business doesn't continue?
Well,
What else
that's
would you
one
look at?
issue, and I think just brought up a couple of others that we can look at, which we definitely can look at. Traffic, we can definitely look at pollution. We can find out more about the employment situation. Because with the zoning change, if you look at the criteria that was also put up on a screen, I think it's in here too, Chris, when you get this, yeah, already. Those criteria, the 7 criteria that we can look at, gives us some fairly wide range to ask those questions. Oh, and you've got them up there too.
Yeah. And just to add, to keep in mind, just like you said, there's already, the South End is an environmental justice zone. And so are we contributing to that by allowing the spot zoning? I shouldn't say spot zoning because it's not the term, but allowing that zoning to extend to that. And that's part of my thought process too.
The recommendation of the staff is to defer this to the next meeting so that there is an opportunity for comments from the public. Because of the notices that went out during the holiday period. So, I mean, we could, if we want, make a recommendation tonight to the common council, or we could defer it.
I would prefer to defer it because I would like to hear from Pastor Johnson's church across the street. I would like to hear from Ms. Dalbro, who has buildings across the street. I would like to explore more how this plan meets with our 2030 plan, which is about adding more green space, more walkable space, more bikeable space. How does this coincide with that, so I'm not sure if it does.
So
So,
before we do that, we do want to give the applicant an
Yeah, they want-
opportunity to make some comments, suggestions. You have a couple of minutes.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. This is all a new experience for me because I don't come here that often. But I'm left with,
Presented very, very well before. Thank you.
no, I'm just totally impressed with what Avi has done and all the passion that I heard. And I'm not sure if I would be speaking at this council again. But there is a lot of misinformation here. There's just gross amount of misinformation here. People say that I do not know about that neighborhood. 15 years, I used to work 5 a.m. I'm the one who was there when there used to be gunshots. A kid got murdered. I went out there and held him. How the hell these people are saying this when they don't know that for 15 years, I put late night hours to build an international company with no money. I am the future. I created a company that is the #1 supplier in this space with zero money in my pocket. I've hired hundreds of interns who went on to be senior VP at Google, at Microsoft. What are we talking? There's a lot of misinformation here. Environmental concerns, there's a railway that runs, as appropriately Mr. Ellis pointed out, between my property and the river. It constantly hauls hazmat, nuclear waste, all sorts of waste is going through that railway.
and that's part of why it's an environmental justice zone.
And I think
So
I completely
I
agree.
appreciate that.
I completely agree
That's
that
part
we
of
should
the
do
reason
something
why
about
it's-
this.
And that's what the city's trying to do.
But allow me to say this at my two more seconds to fame.
Sorry, I interrupted. I
No,
should
quite
not
fine.
have.
That's perfectly fine. That is why we're bringing this business. This business has the least, I have not, for 12 years, I've been paying taxes on that property. I've not let people who wanted to start a pawn shop in that building. I have never given that property to anybody other than what I found to be the least environmentally impacting business. This is a great, clean business. There are no big trucks coming in. They're not dumping hazmat. Right next to it, there's a cleaning, there's a dumpster, there's a whatever that garbage facility right next to it, right across from me. And we're talking about environmental impact of this clean, these wonderful people who are just moving their business a few blocks away. They are the stewards of that property. There will be no 18-wheelers, diesels, and I should know about environmental and transportation pollution. I'm the chief executive of the #1 railway safety company in the world. I monitor all this stuff throughout the world in 37 countries. So I should know something about it. This business is probably the best thing this property is gonna see. I would strongly encourage everybody to come forward. Hey, come forward with some alternate plans. Let's see that. I have 20 people walk through the property and they all wanted me to donate the property free of charge to them. I just cannot do that. And there's one buyer who is thinking of putting it to very good use. And I would strongly encourage that we come together and we figure out the real information here, and I'm all open to listen to every one of you. I called Mr. Willie White 6 months ago, and I did not hear any of this. I would have killed the project back then. Okay, not a problem. Now that we know what are the concerns, I will go back to every one of them, and let's see how much money to put on the table. I'm the one who paid millions of dollars of taxes each year, and I know what this area needs. It needs a great, small industrial manufacturing supplier who is.
You're kind of repeating your.
Yes,
your-
I'm sorry.
You're repeating.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's my passion.
You can speak anymore.
Okay, so
But
other concerns.
My point is, you're making the same arguments you made before, so your time is to clarify any mistakes that were made.
So the only thing I see, environmental concerns are overblown. They really are not real for this particular business. I see internships, that was a concern brought up, that's totally wrong. I've hired hundreds of interns and so have other businesses.
I tend not to talk at these meetings. And I tend not to talk because I usually have so much to say. If I say I'm gonna be offensive. In this instance, I am going to talk. Let's stop with this when we do these meetings. You obviously have a lot of passion. But Ray and Sister Law, they got, everybody is invested and committed. Let's break it down on the facts. Let's put information that is actionable to this group. I won't go and put my kids to bed. I don't want conjecture. I don't want he said, she said. I don't want emotion. I want facts. I want to know if it's been identified. Your response to us now is, I'm going to take all this information back. When we come back and present, we're going to defer this. When I come back and present, I'm going to have the answer. You're not going to stir the pot.
I need 2 minutes.
No, ain't no more 2 minutes. That's done. The chair is spoken. We know how this goes. And you know us in the streets. So if we need to have depth conversations, put it in writing, because that's how this process works. If you say that Councilman Johnson or Pastor doesn't support you, put it in writing. That's how this process works.
Or have them come to a meeting.
Or have them come to a meeting, just be on your behalf and be on the record. And let's not do this part. Let us try to be impartial arbiters of implementing a big old thick USDO with the help of our very capable staff people that help get us through these meetings and not do this part. I understand you all care, but help us by giving us data and facts to help us make solid decisions. That's what I need.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, so the proposal is to defer this.
I move to defer.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So we will defer and bring this up probably at the next. Last item on the agenda
Thank you so much.
is 60 Colvin Avenue.
Next meeting.
This is a long,
Meeting notes will be sent out for the follow-up.
Yes.
oh yeah, the notice is over.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you all. Have a good night.
This is a very, the proposal, this is to basically a recommend, the question is for us to extend the proposal for the development of this property because the time of our approval has run out. So I'll let Mr. Hirschberg, and you don't have to go through all of the plans and everything else, because we've seen it more than twice, maybe even as many as 4 or 5 times.
I think you saw it at least 5 times.
Right, just give.
So I won't repeat what the plan shows.
Thank you.
I will just say essentially, the applicant, which is 4050 Colvin Avenue LLC, is still the same applicant. The project is applying for HRC funding, which is a wonderful program, but it takes time. And you go through, you make an application, you get responses back, you go through a round. Consequently, we will, and our existing approval expires January of next year. Therefore, we're asking for a 1-year extension, which we think would be enough to get us through that HRC process with go ahead for building permits. That's my presentation.
The recommended action is the extension of development plan review approval. But before I go to that, is there anybody who wants to speak in favor of this or against it?
Yeah.
Okay. So the recommended action by the staff is to approve the extension, and it is for how long?
They said 1 year.
So, the way this would go, the initial approval was done administratively. The next approval has to come from the planning board. We were, and I apologize for not including this, but we were going to recommend that they be approved for 2 years this time as they make their way through the different processes that they are. Otherwise, we'd be, again, looking for an extension. So instead of coming back and doing this, we recommend that this be extended for 2 years.
But 2 years, I mean, to get this through HCR? Cool.
Well, you never know. You know, actually, the next round could come through with some positive recommendations. I like the project, but they think we ought to change X, Y, and Z. So you can be on the right track with HRC, ready to get your funding, and then you got another round to go through.
Will there be any harm doing this for 2 years versus 1? Because they're asking for 1, you guys are up in the ante, so that's what I'm asking.
We could see 2 years.
Oh, I don't think you were gonna object to 2 years, but I'm just saying, like.
I would just say like sometimes we've, with everything that's going on, sometimes it kind of slips through the cracks, people not really realizing that they have to come back and then they miss that window of not reapplying for the deferment for a year. We wouldn't necessarily want to have them have to go through the whole thing just because of that. And we've also are aware of a longer and more complicated timeframe for a lot of projects lately, especially ones that are going through these specific programs. So that's why we felt it would be advantageous for 2 years as opposed to 1.
Different question for the applicant. The developer that you're representing is 4050 Copenhagen LLC.
Copenhagen LLC, that was the same applicant, same gentleman before, but he has new partners that are skilled in HRC applications. So it's going to be built in accordance with HRC regulations.
Is the major developer the major partner in the limited liability company? Have you worked with them before, and have they brought items to this board before? Are they experienced developers?
Yeah, this particular developer did another project in the city a couple years ago. It wasn't an HRC project. It was not an HRC project. It was a standard market rate apartments. And at that time, he worked with the city and got his approval. So I assume it went okay, and the building is up. I wasn't released to tell you his name tonight. So
that is not what I'm looking for. The difference between 1 year and 2 years is if you have a motivated developer that's looking to build stuff versus somebody that is not.
Yeah.
So you've answered my question.
yeah, thank you.
Okay. So the recommendation is to extend it for 2 years. I guess they're trying to solve the problem right now.
It's Mr. Willis and the engineer. Avi went down too.
Yeah.
He went down.
So the recommendation is to extend for 2 years. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
For discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Thank you very much.
Experienced developer is not used to 2 years.
Any other?
Right.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Hey, Al, I did want to add one note. I want to add my appreciation for the eloquent words by Mr. Chris Ellis, as he always gets right to the point and is very clear and specific, and I always find it very enlightening and helpful. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
May I bring your attention, we just need a vote to adjourn. We got.
We did that already, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Here's the vote.
Yep. Yes.
I think
we're all ayes.
Aye.
Thank you all.
It went very quickly.